And good afternoon, everyone. I'm TC of Willow Run Acres, also Willow and Ipsy 4-H Club. Today, we're going to discuss the opportunities of cultivating garlic and olives. Growing Hope is the host, and I am the co-host. And again, I'm TC of Willow Run Acres. Growing Hope is located in downtown Ypsilanti, 922 West Michigan Avenue. They are a nonprofit organization. Willow Run Acres is a nonprofit organization. Their central location is 111 South Wallace Boulevard. And the garlic that we're hosting is Great Lakes Garlic Farm. They are located up north next to Traverse City, Michigan. Growing Hope has a garden space that's on Michigan Ave at the intersection of Michigan Ave and First Avenue. They also have a marketplace, an incubator kitchen, and a marketplace hall. Our mission as Willow Run Acres is to teach gardening and farming for all skill levels and to instill the joy of growing our own fresh, healthy, sustainable food system. Also with the 4-H, Willow and Ipsy 4-H, the 4-H is a youth development program. It is a youth outreach program from the land grant universities, cooperative extension services, and the United States Department of Agriculture. The 4-H vision is a world to which youth and adults learn to grow and work together as catalysts for positive change. 4-H also a promise to America's kids in 2025. 4-H will reflect the population demographics, vulnerable populations, diverse needs, and social conditions of the country. This vision has the elements of inclusion, caring adults serving at minimum 1 in 5 youth. And the volunteers and staff reflect the diversity of the population. The 4-H mission, 4-H empowers youth to reach their full potential working and learning in partnership with caring adults. The mission of the 4-H is to provide meaningful opportunities of all youth and adults to work together to create sustainable community change. This is accomplished with 3 primary content areas or mission areas: civic engagement, learning, healthy living, and science. These mission areas radiate the founding purpose of the extension through agriculture, community leadership, quality of life, technology, transfer in their context of the 21st century challenges and opportunities. For myself, I'm the founder of Willow Run Acres and Willow and Ipsy 4-H Club. T.C. Collins started gardening and farming at the age of 2 with his great-grandparents. As descendants of former slaves, the legacy of farming and gardening has been preserved in his family along with other lost traditions. His southern roots gave him an appreciation for green space, and he has been living organically ever since before it was popular. TC manages gardens and farms throughout Michigan. He also reaches many students with his classes, workshops, volunteerism, food distribution, and community engagements through gardening and farming every year. Today, we're going to start with the soil. Start with the soil. Know your soil. Soil is most important. Working with soil has many challenges and many benefits. To begin with your soil, texture will determine the drainage of your soil. Structure. The soil collides or clumps where the mycelium and bacteria work to bring nutrients to the roots. pH. We will discuss pH later in this chapter, but here pH will determine how readily available the nutrients are for the plants to thrive. Nutrients. help to grow different parts of the plants, from the roots to the stems to the leaves. pH. pH is a very important factor. pH can be high or pH can be low. In this part, we're going to talk about the process in a very symptomatic way. Lime increases the pH soil. It is very important to prepare the soil properly by checking the pH level. If you don't have access to checking the pH level, check with your local brick and mortar lawn care service, business, or your local extension, which ours in our area is Michigan State Extension, and they can provide test sampling for you can check the pH level. The range for that price is anywhere from $25 and it can be high as $125. So check with your local extension or stores for determinability of affordability for your testing. Garlic loves to grow in well-defined soil, such as 6.0 to 7.5 pH level. If your soil isn't balanced, never fear. Garlic is a very forgiving plant and it loves to grow. So for an example, if your soil has less carbon and less nitrogen, that is on the low factor of 6.0 and below. If your soil has good, rich, sandy loam with a good high carbon concentrate, and also organic leaf mulch and organic matter, it can range from 7.5 and above. So always check your soil and see where your balance could be at. Garlic is similar to potatoes. Other than onions, it has a soil composition. Optimum growth is very important. As stated, the pH level is 6.0 to 7.5 for a balanced soil maintenance. So for our organization, we try to stay within 6.5 to 7.0, give or take a percentage, but we try to do our best to add soil amendments to the soil to address the soil deficiency. AG lime, also known as agricultural lime, is a soil conditioner made from crushed limestone or dolomite limestone. AG lime works by dissolving and releasing a base that lowers the acidic of the soil. Acidic of the soil. For crops growing in less than ideal acidic conditions, as lime can boost a farmer's profit potential by providing a number of benefits. This is a cost-effective and includes improved fertilizer efficiency by as much as 50%. For an example, by adding dolomite soil lime to the soil, and if you're growing soybean, you can increase your output by up to 50%. Whereas if you're using leaf lettuce or spinach, it has a 25% benefit, just because that the lime itself, it raises the pH level, but it neutralizes the pH level for greens or spinach because it needs more nitrogen and it's a darker leaf plant. Despite the advantages of AG lime applications, according to the International Plant Nutrition Institute, North America farmers apply less than 1/3 of the needed amount of the material. Why? Many growers may not know the true value of AG lime in applications. That is the example that I just gave you by having soybean, which needs more AG lime for a higher percent, or less percent at 25% for lettuce or spinach, because it is a darker leaf green and it needs more nitrogen. So that is why this example was there. Dolomite lime. This is number 2. As the name suggests, dolomite lime is a manufactured by crushing dolomite limestone down to very small pieces. As with agricultural lime, dolomite lime works to increase the pH level of acidic soil and to return the earth to nearly neutral balance, meaning that it goes back to its almost natural state, but it depletes in the soil a lot quicker. The primary difference between the two minerals is that in addition to containing calcium carbonate, dolomite lime also contains a mixture of magnesium carbonate. Typically, the mineral is comprised of approximately 50% calcium carbonate, 40% magnesium carbonate, with the remainder being other materials. Because both calcium bicarbonate and magnesium bicarbonate are basic, the ideal is that both can work together to improve soil conditions, while also introducing valuable nutrients into the earth that are essential to plants. So you see the figure that's on the left, which is a larger limestone, and you see the one that's on to the far right, which is a granular to almost a powdered consistency. The one to the right dissolves and goes into the system a lot quicker. I would say within 1.5 to 2 years, compared to the one that's on to the far left that looks like little pebbles. That is a long-term effect that can be anywhere from 2 years to 5 years. This is a chart that you would like to look at, so that way you know where your soil is in the middle of. It could be higher, strong alkaline, or it can be strong in acid. It's very important. So knowing your soil and what can grow in that soil is very important, because if you grow, for an example, sunflower plants will obtain all 12 of these compounds that's in the system, but it also bleaches the system. Whereas if you're using tomatoes or if you're using eggplants, it will stay in the middle of this category where you will see the light green. And if you see my cursor here, you see nitrogen all the way down to magnesium. This is optimal that you want to try and stay with. Working with garlic, like we talked about at the very beginning, 6.0 to 7.5. So by having 6.0 and 7.5, you are in the medium range. That's why for ourselves, we try to stay within 6.5 to 7.0. So that way we keep a neutral balance. That's just our preference. It doesn't mean that it has to be your preference. Soil amendments is very important. Good soil is developed to address specific plant needs. Soil can be pre-mixed and ready to use, specifically formulated for the certain plants you desire to grow. The only exception where this falls into play is that if you're using peat moss or coconut coir, those are very high acidic and it can spike your pH level strongly to the higher side, but it will gradually go back down to being neutral. Soil amendments can be added to the soil to help prevent compaction in clay soils, such as perlite. This helps to prevent root rot and to promote strong root growth, to improve drainage aeration. Sorry about that. You can also find individual amendments to add to your own natural ground soil to improve the soil composition. To adjust the texture and structure of the soil, you can use sand. Can be essential with drainage. Understanding there is playground sand, which is fine. You can use extra fine sand, which is silk sand, or you can use carpenter sand or masonry sand, which is a gritty sand. Those are the three best sands to use. 3 different aspects of drainage depending on your soil. Compost, including aged animal manure, are rich in plant nutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and provide organic matter that conditions the soil. This makes an excellent soil amendment for the home gardener, and it's important to use them effectively and safely. So let me go over this again. You can add too much animal aged manure, which it can be too rich, and it will burn your plants. It has to be neutral, 50-50, or you can use 35% sand, 35% compost, and 30% animal manure, and that's a good balance. But if you add too much animal manure. It can be too strong with too much nitrogen, too much potassium, and it can burn the soil. And it would have to aerate at least 8 months. Nitrogen. Nitrogen is very important. Garlic also needs more nitrogen than most people think. It is very important to add nitrogen at the very beginning. Manure such as cow or poultry and even horse manure are excellent sources. Reason why it needs nitrogen at the very beginning, because it needs to have proper and good root growth. Because once it takes all the minerals and the elements from the nutrients over winter, it stores them and turns them into sugar. So that way it will properly grow into the springtime, going into summer. So it's very important to give it most nitrogen as you can, such as cow or poultry. Compost and all other manure types enrich soil benefits fertility to help soil to retain and release nutrients to the plant containers over a long time. Phosphorus is needed for optimum growth development. Sulfur. Sulfur is a compound and is directly related to garlic's unique healing benefits, such as flavor. Sulfur also lowers soil pH by reducing excess alkalides it provides. Plants with iron, which is needed for green growth and enhances water filtration. When adding sulfur, sprinkling gypsum over your beds in the spring after the plants have emerged and begun to leaf out. So what that means is that break it down in elements or break it down in stages. At the very beginning, if we're planting garlic or any allium, you want to give it a nice, rich manure, compost, sand composition. Then, when you're adding phosphorus, phosphorus is needed for optimum growth development, building up the layers of the garlic while it overwinters. Then, in the spring, adding sulfur directly to the soil is very beneficial because that's when the onions, the garlic, or alliums family achieves their flavor. So what you add is more flavor boosting. Adding sulfur gypsum over the beds in the springtime is the best time. So when you have your plant at least 3 to 4 inches in height, it begins to leaf out. And that takes it to going into from the early spring to mid-spring to late spring. Compost, aged manure. Compost aged manure is very important. There are several different ways of composting, but for this example, we want to give you the benefits of composting and doing it correctly. Where you see the far left of the cow at the bottom, that is green manure, or what you would call unfinished compost that has not been broken down into its full maturity. As you see the picture to the left of the cow, you see rows of compost, and you can faintly see that there's a fine mist or mist over the area. That is heated compost. Compost or aged manure, rotten manure, compost manure refers to waste from livestock, poultry, cattle, horses, usually mixed with sawdust, wood, shavings, or food. Poultry manure, such as chicken, it is most concentrated source of nitrogen of any manure. That is very important to understand. And I will read that again. Poultry manure, such as chicken, is the most concentrated source of nitrogen than any other manure. That is the number one on the list. Unlike cow manure, poultry manure does not need to be turned under, but it is still important to mix it in with the soil before planting, especially since nitrogen is so concentrated. But warning, do not put cat or dog feces in the garden, ever. When adding manure, you do not want to add cow manure close to harvest time. It is important that when you add manure, it is at least 120 days before harvest takes effect. This is the best time to add manure at at that time before beginning of planting season. So understand this. Manure has organisms and parasites and different type of pathogens. In order for it to break down, you want to make sure you space your time out accordingly, at least 128 days. In the fall, 3 weeks prior to planting, it is best time to put aged manure in the fields. This way, you will have time for the smell to dissipate and also less nitrogen to settle into the fields so that it doesn't go back into the clothes. Other ways to adjust your soil. Compost tea is an excellent way, and it restores nitrogen and other components to the soil. So if you see my mouse cursor, this is nitrogen brute compost tea. By you using an aerator and a bubbler and air stones, it holds the aerator down at the bottom and it adds oxygen to the water as the compost is in a sling bag, and it concentrates and makes a nice compost tea. Cover crops, also known as green manure, adds nutrients to your soil and helps loosen the soil. This picture here is green manure. The next one, don't till during this time. This is a non-till garden. You see green in the middle, but you see brown in every other row. That provides nitrogen. Then we have peat moss. Peat moss increases the soil ability to retain moisture and nutrients while improving drainage. Peat moss is also a non-renewable source and should be used in minimum amounts. That is very important to know. Non-renewable resources. That's a very understanding concept, and we have to take note of the process of non-renewable because it cannot be used over and over again. Perlite. Perlite is a form of volcanic rock that is crushed and heat treated. Lightweight particles, when added to the soil, it adds air to the soil and improves water drainage. Then the last one here. Mulch is a moisture retention method that fosters plant growth and maintenance by shielding plants from direct sunlight and drying out the soil. So using mulch, I will go to the middle picture over here, putting it in these middle rows to suppress weeds and also retains moisture. Steps for growing garlic. Number 1, test your soil. See what it needs. If it needs to be amended, if it needs to have more nutrients, and if it needs to have more nitrogen. Amend the soil. Prepare the soil. Preparing the soil by making a hill or a mound is proper, so that way the higher up it is, the more it will be able to drain and aerate. Tilling the soil is best to till the soil 14 to 17 days prior to planting garlic. Reason for is because you till the soil, you turn the soil from down to up, and then it adds air to the soil, and it can also break down and kill some of the leaves or break down some of the grass and can kill the grass. And it also helps break down organic matter by turning the soil. Plant your garlic. Planting your garlic and having much space is needed. You want to plant your garlic at least 4 to 6 inches apart. Ideal is 6 inches to 8 inches apart, but depending on space, no more than 4 inches apart. It needs to have space. So that's why I strongly suggest 6 to 8 inches apart. There's many different people that do different ways of garlic, but for having optimum growth, space, aeration, and also disease control, 6 to 8 inches is ideal. Then water your garlic. Water your garlic is most important because that way it starts to maintain the growth of roots. Then layer on top after you water the mulch. And the reason why that is important, because if you plant your garlic and then you put mulch down, then you water it, you're only watering the mulch. So it has to be in these steps by planting, then water, then mulch. Then within 3 to 4 weeks, you have a waiting game. When you wait and you see what garlic has sprouted, then you can see that is a success. From there, that is when you wait over winter. And over winter, meaning that you let your garlic cure in the ground. It grows over winter by adding the nutrients at the very beginning. And then it's time to harvest. From the time you harvest your garlic and you put it in a cool, dark environment by hanging it up. And then you spread it, the roots around, so that way it can be maintained and get good aeration. And that way it will cure itself. This is the garlic anatomy. Very important. From the very beginning, when you get a garlic bulb, this is your garlic bulb. By breaking it up into cloves, you have individualized cloves. It is best to keep as much as you can all the paper that is on the garlic. That is all about disease control. It has to have the paper on the whole clove itself. From planting, it will start to gather roots within the first 3 weeks. Ideally, the first 2 weeks before the first frost, which is between October 10th and November 12th is the ideal time. From that time, you will see a little sprout, and it will be here from the stem. That's all you will see at this time once you overmulch it. Once you overmulch it, it will start to grow over the winter. And then in early spring, it starts to give you a longer stem, which is called the false stem. Giving you this false stem is giving you good success that you know you're doing very well. You will see leaves starting to form. That is letting you know that the nitrogen and also the sulfur that you have added to the soil is taking root. By the middle of May, you will see a little crown or a stem protruding out. That is very important to notice. That takes more energy from the bulb development to the top. This is called the garlic scape. The garlic scape is very important. It lets you know that you have less than 5 weeks left of garlic season. From that garlic season time, this is the ideal time to cut the scape off right here. So that way it sends the energy back to the bulb development. And that time, from the time you added sulfur to the soil, it starts to build its flavor to build this bulb into perfection. Now, this is the garlic clove. Very important to understand this clove here. This comes from the bulb. This is the garlic scape. If you continuously let this grow, you will have a small bulb at the bottom because all the energy is focusing to produce this garlic scape here. This is called the garlic bulbs. These are tiny individual bulbs of tiny garlic seeds. These are the false seeds. The reason why I say they're the false seeds because this bulb turns into this clove by breaking it apart with the paper on it. This takes 7 months to develop a true garlic stalk. If you take these individually bulbs out and grow them independently by themselves, this will take you at least 3 to 4 years to grow a garlic the long, hard way. So it's very important to cut the scape off at the very beginning of the 3rd week of May going into June. Several different varieties of garlic. We have soft neck, which is grown primarily very early spring, all the way up until fall, or you can overgrow them, which most people grow hardneck garlic, which is here, right here, that you can grow from October and let it overwinter and harvest in early July. This here is the garlic scape that is barely formed. Like I told you, in the 2nd week going into the 3rd week of May. This here is the process that when you get into around the last week of June, and that's where all the energy has formed all here, which you don't want. You want to ideally pick it when it's like this. Most people, when they pick this garlic scape, it's still edible. All forms of the garlic is edible besides the garlic paper itself. The garlic scape can be blended into pesto. It can be blended into garlic green powder and added to soups. It can be sauteed with olive oil, sea salt, and pepper flakes, and black pepper. Many different recipes for garlic scapes. For garlic scapes itself, it's a very true delicacy in many different farmers markets. There can range from $3 to $4 a piece, or most garlic farmers markets that's out there, you probably get a bundle for about $3 for $7, depending on the purveyor that provides that garlic. For myself, it's best to always know where you get your garlic from. Either it's natural or organic, or if it's one of your reputable friends that grow garlic, because you don't know what they grow in their soil. So having these examples here, it's best to pick your garlic when it's this stage to this stage. When it's getting to this side, it's too late, and you will get a small garlic bulb. These are garlic scapes. When you see them like this, it's best to cut them off as soon as possible. They are still edible, and they still have a strong garlic taste. A lot of people call them the Peter Pan hats because they look like the little hat of Peter Pan. Chestnut garlic, a purple striped garlic variety that originates from the Republic of Georgia in Eastern Europe. This garlic is one of the best performing garlic varieties. It is cold and hardy variety and does well in a large range of soil types. It is beautiful color with purple stripes. It tastes is close to hot and spicy flavor with a lingering and nice flavor. Also is mellow, and it stores very long and with cooking. Good for baking with a creamy texture. For the past several years, we've been growing this variety of chestnut garlic. I would say that it's probably number 5 in our garlic growing capacity. From a 1 to 7, we give it a 5. Italian purple, Gambino, easily to grow and very popular with both gardeners and with cooking enthusiasts. It's a timely variety with known as Gambino. This primarily garlic can be found in many kitchens. It is cold hardy and thrives in Canada, harsh cold winters. This variety will consistently produce healthy bulbs with goat's eyes purple color. However, this brand doesn't produce much spicy effects. So what that means, that it's a good producing garlic. It produces a nice brilliant color, but it doesn't give you the overtones of a spicy. So this is a 2 of a scale from 1 to 7 because it's very mellow. The Persian Star, commonly known as the Persian Star, this garlic is a all-around variety, one of the best favorites. It has a purple stripes and is barely grown in Pakistan. It is lightly colored and purple striped, making it one of the most attractive garlics available. The Persian Star is mild, spicy, zinging, elegant flavor garlic that has a bit of a bite. It gives a nutty flavor when roasted, similar to chestnut in contrast, that have a slightly milder taste. So for this one, it's again between 1 and 7, that this is a 5, for the simple fact that it doesn't, for myself, has a good strong bite or a spicy taste. The Russian red comes from the purple stripe down the close. It is from Eastern Europe, treasure that is very fiery, but then mellow and smooth aftertaste. It has heat when eaten, when it's raw, offers a wonderful, fully complex flavor. This garlic leaf flavors is abundant when cooking with Russian red. It is high yielding garlic and rich soils too, but its inadequate moisture it thrives in Canadian cold climates. It grows well and explodes out of the ground in the springtime. Additionally, it's generally tolerable in wet soil conditions too. So that's important to know that this is a good garlic, but at the same time, it does work well in moist or wet soil. This here itself is a 4 because of the simple fact that it holds its flavor, but it mellows out after cooking. The Spanish Roja. This well-known garlic that was brought to Portland, Oregon in the 1800s is one of the best and beautiful available for sampling. Also, this variety does very well in cold winters. Spanish Roja is one of the top winner for the rich, complex flavor and its full body with character. This escape should be removed to ensure good formation. It grows well in a wide range of soil and cotton in color. And what's that mean is that you see the picture here. It is a very brilliant red or magenta red garlic, and it holds its moisture real well. So for this, I would give you at least a 6 on a scale of spiciness and complexity. The marbled purple striped garlic comes from packing a lot of heat. This variety of garlic is similar to a porcelain variety or a big boy Nordic and very cold hardy. Also, is well suited in regions when it does not tolerate excess moisture very well. Therefore, it is best grown in well-drained soil. Additionally, this variety of garlic produces garlic scapes, medium-sized bulbs that can be used for planting, although escapes can be removed for maximum above the sizes. So this is a very good garlic to have if you have good drainage soil. But again, if you have excess moisture, it doesn't do well. So I would say this is a 1 on a scale from 1 to 7. Big Boy, a wonderful variety that is easy to grow in various regions. It can produce big bulbs. It is similar to other varieties. However, it has more purple coloring and sweet flavoring consistent with the Persian star family group. It works very well in cold climates and a wide range of soil conditions. Helps produce tall and pressed plants with dark green leaves. Remove scapes is excessive for maximum size bulb. So for this, it will stay into the 5 category for the simple fact that it is a good garlic to grow in cold conditions, but it's a sweet garlic. Music. Music is imported from Italy. Music has become one of the most widely grown garlics among Canadian and United States commercial growers. It has been popular in eastern Canada for many years and northern United States. It performs very well in cold climate, and it is excessively robust in flavor and produces large plants that stands out. It has big garlic balls with very large cloves to be white. So for this itself, it stays for me as a 6 because of the simple fact that, yes, you do get good plants, but it doesn't give you the large bulbs. We do grow this variety itself, but it doesn't stand out as a good, strong candidate to be a 7. Now, this variety of garlic, I do not personally grow softneck garlic because I do not like softneck garlic. That is my preference. Softneck garlic is named for the way that they are arranged inside the bulb. I look for a layer structured for an artichoke, 10 to 14 close and varying size. This is a broad but horizontal plant with horizontal leaves, with no escapes, yes. What makes it less work than hunting it, it can be braided and trimmed for long-term storage. We have the artichoke garlic, have a mild for good flavor. However, they are generally regarded as having a less complex taste than other garlic. Originally from the Cloville Indian Reservation in Alliums, Washington, it has light purple blotching on very large bulbs. Achillium red, like other artichoke types, is known for its adaptability to different growing zones, high productivity, and early maturity. So for me, my preference, I do not grow any soft-neck garlic. Silver rose soft-neck garlic. Silver rose is widely adapted and produces consistently in any climate. This variety is fast growing, stores well up to 6 months when stored loose or braided. Curing your garlic. Layering it out in individual spaces, at least by hanging, by braiding in a cool, dark environment, helps curate the garlic before trimming the roots off at the bottom. This is some of the garlic that we have grown over the years, which is our favorite is the Siva variety. Then comes the chestnut red. Then comes music in that category. Growing onions on a short day or an intermittent day or a long day. There are different varieties of onions depending on the region that you're growing them in. Short day is a process that it reaches day length hours from 10 to 12 hours. They mature in 110 days, which is this one on the far left. Short day onions mature in 40 to 75 days when planted in northern states and late spring, but will not get very large, such as candy onion, or you will get the Walla Walla onion, those variety, or the Zephyr red onion. Those onions itself, they will get about the size of a baseball or slightly a little bit larger than a navel orange, but that's the farthest that they will grow. But that's a good span to have an onion. But if you want the full optimum onion, it's best to plant the onion in your area. That is the long day onion variety. The earlier you plant your onions, the short day onions, the larger they get. Short day onions are best and suited for latitudes in the 25 to 35 degrees. And that is right here in this picture. You see from Southern California, go straight across. And if you think about it, it's the Mason-Dixie line, straight across from east to west, all the way up to, I would say, very end of Southern Virginia or northern North Carolina. That is a short day variety onion. The intermediate day onion itself here in the middle, it goes from upper Southern California to North California, all the way through the middle of Ohio River Belt, all the way to, you get to Southern New Jersey, and also extend further south from South Carolina, mid Georgia area, and upper Texas. Those onions itself are day neutral, where the sunlight itself reaches 12 to 14 hours and produce nice sized bulbs, unless you live further south, which you can get a larger bulb. Here we are in the Great Lakes or the northern region, long day onions. Long day onions start when the day length reaches 14 to 16 hours. And you're probably scratching your head. When do we have 14 to 16 hours of daylight? Well, the biological clock for most vegetables and fruits, they have a biological clock starting from 5:30 in the morning all the way until 9 o'clock at night. That is their clock. And they know the process of growing through long day process. They do extremely well in the northern states. Sweet storage, especially long day varieties, long day onions. They have different varieties. And when I talked about the Walla Walla onion, unless you grow them early March and have good drainage soil with good compost, and also Spanish onion, the Zephyr red onion. You should be able to get a large onion by starting early March all the way until late October. You should be able to get a size of, I would say, half size of a cantaloupe onion. It's successful. Onion planting guide is very important. When you get your onions from a onion seller or a Lowe's or a Home Depot type of setting, remove the onions from the box immediately. They need to air out before you get any type of fungus or disease on the onions. They do not need no moisture. That's why you must take them out of the box. Do not put in the soil or water before planting, because they start growing immediately if they get moisture, or they start to root immediately. Keep them in a cool, dark, dry place until you can plant them. Follow the instructions for best results. Most common problems found with growing onions are blight, purple blotch, and thrips. Both blight and purple blots are caused by fungus and are more common during periods of high moisture. So when you have multiple onion sets or sprouts bunched together, and all it takes is just small condensation to get onto those, that immediately starts the process of fungus growth. Blight appears in small white spots surrounded by a greenish halo. Purple blots caused by a purple discoloration of the leaves. Proper plant spacing helps increase airflow and reduces blight and purple blots. The best preventative measure, however, is to use of a fungicide, such as this one here, which I'm not going to butcher the name, but it's Manzacab or sea scab every 2 weeks after planting. Thrips are insects that sometimes attack onions. They look like small, tiny maggots. Onion plants, causing the leaves to turn gray. Thrips are barely visible and are yellow or dark specks. Treat thrips infestations with an application of an insecticide. Sprouting onion. Keeping the paper on the bulbs is very important. The thin paper covering protects the leaves of the same bulb. This is the bulb here. This is the lateral bulb here or here. These are the roots. You want to make sure your roots are nice, firm. They may be a little dry. That is fine. The bulb itself has layers of paper on the outside of it. That is fine. And you may see a little stem that may come out. That is new growth. That is fine. These are the ideal ways of having bulbs for onions. The onion stage itself is very important. There are many different ways. You can start onions by seeds, which is this here, from off of this plant here. Collect the seeds off of here and here. This method, it takes at least 230 days to get you a successful onion from seed to bulb. This is the seed as it sprouted. Most onion sets or onion starts come in bundles, or they come in loose bulbs. Onion sets are bunches of onions that are either 3 to 4 dozen in a bunch, and they are bundled together, and they look as this right here, or as you can see as a onion seed very early. These are just droplets of seeds. There's many forms of onion bulbs, onion seeds, and onion sets. The best is to get loose, open onion sets that are not compact and are dry, no moisture. Preparation for the soil is very important when planting onions. You want to ensure that the plants may appear but they should be dry but almost unalarmed, which meaning that you don't want them to be stressed out. They shouldn't be dormant, but they shouldn't be in a way that it looks dead. You want to make sure that your plants can be grown and planted immediately once obtained. Even if the roots and the tips begin to dry out, onions can live off the bulb for approximately 3 weeks. Do remove the plants from the box immediately. Keep them in a well-ventilated area. Keep it in a cool environment and plant them once you get them. Do not put them in the soil or water until time for planting. And I stress that mostly. Soil preparation. Onions require full sun, good soil drainage. Choose a location that gets plenty of direct sun. Even though you may be planting it in the springtime, you have to take into consideration how they're going to be growing in the fall or in the late summer, because the sun changes directions. So it's best to know your location at all times of planting most plants. If it needs full sunlight, you should take consideration of finding a direct sunlight area with no shade towards the spring, towards the summer and early fall. To stop weeds for up to 6 weeks, rake a area and put a herbicide or a organic herbicide in that area, or at the most, use a herbicide that does not affect the onions or the plants itself. Most important, cardboard leaf mulch is the ideal way to suppress weeds. If you have to use herbicides, but use with caution. Soil type. It is helpful to know whether your soil is below 7.0 or alkaline, pH level above 7.0. Onions prefer with the pH between 6.2 or 6.8. Your agriculturist extension service can test your soil, or you can buy a home test kit at your local garden center. Or you can visit any local garden farm operation that's locally that can help you to assist you the best way needed. If your soil is too acidic, mix with ground limestone available at your garden center. If it's too alkaline, add peat moss. Dig a trench that's 4 feet by 4 feet and sprinkle a half cup of fertilizer about 10 linear feet of a row. Cover the fertilizer with 2 inches of soil. Plant the onions 6 feet from the edge of the trench from both sides of the trench. Do not plant the onions in the trench. Leave a 2-inch margin between the onions and the outside of the bed. Plant the onions 1 inch deep and no deeper. If you can take your finger and you take your pinky finger out and you see the first line of your pinky finger, that is exactly 1 inch. Ideally, onions need to breathe, so that's why you keep the outer skin on the onion, so that way they can breathe as they grow. Do not plant onions no deeper than that, or they will rot. Plant the onions 1 inch deep and no deeper, as this will inhibit their ability to grow. If you want the onions to grow to its maturity, place them 4 inches apart. If you prefer to harvest some earlier as green onions, space them 2 inches apart and pull every other onion during the growing season. Leave the rest to grow maturely. When planting several rows of onions, leave 16 inches between the outer edge of one bed and the outside edge of the next. Then spacing from the center of the fertilized trench to the center of the next should be 36 inches. So I will show you this at the top. Having your onion here and having your onion here. Fertilizer here. Reason 4, the fertilizer will be able to be leached on both ends of the onions because the onion roots are searching for the source of the fertilizer. If you put the fertilizer too close to the onions, then your onions won't successfully grow an onion. It will just grow the tops because, again, fertilizer is adding nitrogen to the plant. And adding this nitrogen to the plant, you're getting green growth. You're not getting a bulb growth. That is what the gypsum is for, and that is what the sulfur is for. Adding too nitrogen too early, too soon, you're only getting green growth. Water and fertilize and weeding. Water and fertilize and weed. The better care of your onions received during the growing season, the more likely you will have a bountiful harvest. Water thoroughly after planting and regular thereafter. Watering onions should be every fourth day, depending on your climate and how dry your soil is. Onions have shallow roots, so don't let the soil at the base of the plant become dry and cracked. Overwatering is equally problematic. If leaves develop a yellow tip, cut back on the watering. The closer to harvest time, the greater the need for watering. However, when the onion tops start falling over, stop watering and let the soil dry out before harvesting. Fertilizer. Nutritional needs are different during the growing season. Every 2 to 3 weeks after planting, fertilize with ammonium sulfate. In alkaline soils or calcium nitrate, 15.5-5-0 in alkaline soil. Sprinkle on top of the soil of the original fertilizer strip at the rate of a half a cup per 10 feet of a row. The best way to go at this is you get a 5-gallon bucket of water and a half cup of fertilizer and dissolve that fertilizer in that 5-gallon bucket and water your plants with that 5-gallon bucket. So that way you can measure the water usage for a 10-foot row. A 10-foot row is equivalent to a 5-gallon bucket. Weeds are most important. Controlling weeds is critical to preventing competition of nutrients. If you don't weed your if you don't weed your garden, you're growing weeds and you're growing left of onions or any other plant. An application of Teflon or corn gluten meal rate on top of the soil every 6 weeks during the growing season will prevent weeds from returning. Mulching with a light layer of straw will help control weeds and preserve moisture. Be sure to put the straw back when the plants start to grow the bulbs so they will cure properly. Harvesting and storing. Proper treatment and harvest maximize the amount of time you'll be able to store your onions. Harvesting. When the tops of the onions turn brown or yellow and fall over, it's time to harvest ideally. The plant will have about 13 leaves at this point. Pull the onions in the morning on the sunny day. Dry the onions in the sun for 2 days to prevent sun scald. Lay the tops of one row over the bulbs of another. How long is the best way to understand is to do it a long time so that way you're properly drying them. Curing. How long your onions will keep depending on how you treat them after harvest. They must be dried thoroughly to avoid problems with rot. If left outside when the weather is dry, this will take 2 to 3 days. But also, turning them over consistently will dry them out. The entire neck where the leaves meet the bulb should be dry all the way to the surface of the onion and shouldn't slide when you pinch it. The skin will take on a uniform texture and color. If rain is expected, you need to dry your onions indoors. Spread them out in a well-ventilated area with room to breathe. Drying indoors take a lot longer than outdoors. Once the onions are thoroughly dry, clip the roots and cut back the tops of the onions 1 inch. Now they're ready to eat. Remember when I had talked about the roots, you never want to cut the roots until they're thoroughly dry, because when you cut them, taking them out of the ground, you're setting yourself up for ingrown parasites. So you want the roots to dry thoroughly and then cut them. Store onions in a cool, dry, well-ventilated location such as a garage or a cellar. Place them in mesh bags or a netting to permit airflow. Periodically check for any soft onions and remove them and avoid discoloration of the others. As a general rule, sweet onions don't store as long as more pungent ones, so use the sweet onions first. Shallots, how to grow. Shallots grow best in long day areas. Upon arrival, soil preparation care for shallots and prepare soil for shallots just as onions. Placing shallots 1 inch to 1.5 inch deep and 2 inches apart. Water gently and thoroughly after planting. Watering, fertilizing, and weeding care for shallots just as onions. Harvesting shallots should be harvested 110 to 120 days once the tops have fallen over, similar to onions. Store shallots in a cool, dry, well-ventilated location. Place them in a mesh bag or a netting to permit airflow. Sorry about that. Shallots are known for their long shelf life. If stored properly, they can store up to 8 months. So I would like to make a correction on this. In this article, it talks about 1 inch to 1.5 inch deep and 2 inches apart. You want to make sure that your shallots are at least 12 to 18 inches apart. And reason for, when you see this picture right here at the far bottom right corner, they may be one shallot growing, but they grow tubers all around the outside. And that mass of tubers expands outward to at least 12 to 18 inches outward in all circular locations. So 12 to 18 inches away from this onion or shallot is very important because you want to make sure you have good airflow. Leeks. If you can take a regular ink pen or a regular pencil, push it into the ground, this is your tool for growing leeks. Growing leeks are easy to grow in cool climates. They're best suited to growing where temperature range from 55 to 75 degrees. Unlike onions, day length is not a factor in their growth. Upon arrival, soil conditions takes care for leeks and prepare for soil for leeks just as onions. Planting leeks 4 to 6 inches apart in rows 6 foot to 12 foot apart. Use the handle of a hoe to poke holes. That's where I was saying use a pencil. 6 to 8 inches deep where each plant will fall into. Place the plant or the transplants one to a hole so that the youngest leaves protrudes just above the soil surface. Do not backfill, do not cover. Just drop the youngest transplant into that hole, 6 to 8 inches deep. Water gently and thoroughly after planting. That's why you don't want to backfill. Watering gently will gradually drop soil upon the transplants. Watering, fertilizing, and weeding care for leeks just as onions. Harvesting leeks can be harvested at any time after 30 days because they're hardy. They're often left in the ground until needed. Storing after harvest. Leeks need to be refrigerated near 32 degrees and at high humidity. Cool them upon digging and pack them in plastic bags to prevent drying. They can be stored in this way up to 2 to 3 months. Leeks can also be frozen. For maximum flavor, cook them without thawing. So when you drop your leeks, these are the new seedlings. You just drop them into the hole. Do not fill them in because when you water it gently, that is a natural occurrence that it would drop the water softly onto the leeks. Leeks need to have air, and that way they will grow to a larger leek. I want to thank everyone for joining today for this timely discourse of understanding about garlic, alliums, and also leeks and shallots. I want to thank Great Lakes Garlic for their participation. I want to thank myself or the audience itself. I want to thank the 4-H for supporting us. I also want to thank you for attending, and I also want to thank Growing Hope for help hosting this event on an annual basis to help get the word out about gardening and farming is most important. If you have any questions, you can reach Rilla Run Acres or you can reach Growing Hope at any time. If we don't know the answer, we will find the answer that can best answer that question that you obtain us. Growing Hope's web address is growinghope.net. Rilla Run Acres is willarunacres.com. And again, I want to thank everyone. Anyone have any questions about today's event?
Hi, thank you, TC. I do have one question. Um, so in order to produce larger garlic cloves, is it possible to cut the garlic scapes ahead of time before they even get longer
That's
to
a
stop it from growing?
Yes, that's a good question. In order to get a larger bulb from the garlic itself, choosing your garlic cloves at the very beginning of growing season is very important. So you want to separate your small cloves from your big cloves and grow your big cloves in an area that it has good drainage soil. And then when that matures in midsummer, picking off the scape is very crucial because once that scape starts to build and gets bigger, it's taking the energy from developing that bulb because the garlic bulb itself does not develop until late May because it turns the nitrogen into sugar. And from that nitrogen turning it into sugar in the month of May, it's starting to develop that scape. And that scape is a natural occurrence that it sends it out to send out those little bobbies. You want to cut that off immediately. So that way that energy focuses back to the bulb and that sugar stays to the bulb itself. And the plant itself, it knows to keep the sugar into the bulb and not going up to that stem. And it also sends a signal to that same process of sending nitrogen to the leaves instead of sending the sugars to the leaves and to that scape. So if you want a large bulb, it starts off at the very beginning of selecting your your cloves from the bulb at the very beginning of planting. Then during maturity, you want to cut that scape off immediately to keep them sugars to staying into that bulb. So that way you will get a larger continuation of growth for that bulb to develop. So from the month of May to the July peak before harvest, that 5 weeks, that's when that garlic turns into a garlic bulb and it turns that sugar into nice, rich bulb. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else have a question?
PC, I really enjoyed the class today. It was a bonus to learn about the scallops and the leeks. I was wondering, when do you plant the shallots and the leeks?
The leeks, I will start first. I will start those in the month of February, growing those indoors, and they would take at least for 5 weeks, 5 to 8 weeks to develop. So they're strains, they're very shallow type of plant. So starting those at least 8 weeks before spring is very important. As far as the shallots, I start the shallots. I'm growing those in the next 2 weeks. I'm putting fall shallots into the ground. The same time I'm putting garlic in the ground. But then in the springtime, I'm putting out spring shallots. So that way I will have two crops in the ground, one for the winter, from the fall to spring, and then one from spring to fall. So I would say within the next 2 weeks, I will be planting garlic, and I'm planting shallots, and I'm planting onions.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And we're growing 4 different varieties of garlic. And if anyone needs garlic seed, I have garlic seed available.